Hi. How many of you are artists? Okay. So I've never done this before, so we're just going to reinvent or invent this this process. Why don't we start with the dinosaur times? And we'll go back to 25 years ago when I opened the gallery and how we used to market artwork. And then I'll bring us up to what we're doing today. 25 years ago, we would receive artworks in the gallery and we would shoot slides. And then for the really special works that were the invitations or potentially catalog works, we would shoot transparencies, 4x5 transparencies. Inevitably, no matter how many times you sent these out, you never got them back. And it was a very expensive process because transparencies usually cost about $100 a piece, and you needed 10 transparencies of a show, and then you had to stop and think about who would you mail these to, knowing that you weren't getting them back again. And you would inevitably try to hold back something in the event that there was a catalog or something that you needed a high-resolution image for. We also, at that time, didn't have any way of sending out an image to someone. It was, you either sent out slides, which were very difficult for a client to look at, something this big and hold up and try to imagine some of the things that make artwork important. If you look inside the show, there's no way you could possibly hold up a little slide and kind of get a feeling for what's going on in that artwork. Everything is missing. You would need to be able to move around it. You'd have to see the textures. You'd have to see the materials. And a slide could never provide that for you. A transparency could get close, but even then, it's not going to do it for you. And I had a mentor back in 1993 when I opened. I was a waiter in a local restaurant in Laguna Beach. His name was Stuart Katz. And Stuart had this amazing eye. And he just had a way of knowing who the big artists were going to be. And here he was in Laguna Beach living in this hillside, ex-criminal attorney out of Chicago that just had a knack for picking the right artists. And I always listened to him. I rarely ever agreed on the type of art that he liked. We had very different tastes in art. And I made a lot of mistakes over the years by not following him into. I followed my own sensibilities. But he was the guy that first in 1993 came to me with a show that he had in his mind of all of these street artists, big Ed Roth and all those big guys that today are just household names. I was too dumb to see through that one. I saw the work and I said, oh, geez, these look like cartoons to me. He said, they are. But I had never gotten into cartoons, and I couldn't see the value of this work. Years later, I not only do I see the value of it, but I really learned to love it as part of California culture, surf culture and street art and everything else that is so popular today. But he called me up one day, and he said, I have this idea that I want to share with you. It's way ahead of its time, but I think you really would enjoy seeing this. So I went up the hill, and I sat down with him, and he had, I don't know, did we call them floppy disks? They were these square things. And I said, what's that? He said, this is the future. He said, one day you'll be able to photograph your entire show, put it on this disc, and you'll be able to mail this disc to your clients. And I said, where would they view this? He said, they'll put it in a computer, and up it will come on their screen. I said, and you really think that people are going to buy art from a computer screen? He said, oh, yeah, I really do. I know they will. And, again, this is a guy that has proven me wrong in a very short amount of time that, I was a dealer. So I thought, I've got to listen to this guy because there's something about what he's telling me that really makes sense, although it doesn't make sense for me. So over time, that was the very first time that I actually saw the possibility of the future that we're living in today. It was like, wow, you could actually take a computer, and on that computer you could have an image of an artwork, and that you could somehow or another send this disc to another person, and that person would insert this disc into a computer, and somebody would buy this artwork. And I thought, this is great. So fast forward, years later, we run into this thing called the internet. And once again, Stewart is saying, look, the internet, this is going to be huge. One day you'll be able to put your entire gallery onto a site, and people from all over the world will be able to come onto your site and know exactly what's in your show. I said, okay, here we go again with the computer screen. And somehow or another, somebody's going to buy something from a computer screen. Hard for me to understand, because early on, the love I had for the gallery, and mind you, I'm not a trained art dealer. I was a waiter on a night that I'd been promoted to general manager of the restaurant I was working in, and happened to walk past my first location after a few too many drinks, and looked inside the space and thought, wow, what a great place to have an art gallery. And 2 days later, I signed a lease and promised the owner of the shopping center my paycheck from the restaurant every week. And that's how I got started in the art world. So I was already disadvantaged from people that had either grown up in the arts with family that were artists or dealers who might have been artists themselves. I had no experience whatsoever in it. And I went through this process of learning, but one of the things that I really loved about being an art dealer was installing the shows. I took great pleasure in installing the shows, and I assumed that all my colleagues also felt the same way, that installing an exhibit was something that you just spent days doing. It wasn't something that you hired some art students and paid them $15 an hour, and they came in and they hung everything at 60 on center, and there's your show. I actually really love to install shows. I really love to light shows. I search for this level in a show that makes it appear effortless. And getting to that place is the hardest thing you could ever imagine. If you walk into the show here, you'll see, and I can say this without sounding arrogant, it's a beautiful show. And I've really, my wife Stephanie and I worked on this show. And it flows, and it's effortless, and I'm sure that if you looked at it, you'd think, not a big deal. I mean, so he put up some work, there's some plastic in there, some minimal work, that's not hard to do. And I'm sure the staff here has probably gone home and over at the dinner table said, I've got this crazy guy who's in there for days now, moving things around. They show up with this big black van every day, and they load and unload and load and unload, and we don't know what's going on with him. Matter of fact, I know that by the last day or two, everyone was kind of feeling like, is it ever going to open the show? Because it's not looking like it's ever going to open. But, part of the whole computer thing is that you lose the beauty of these installations. And, it was hard for me to understand not only the technology, not being savvy with computers, cameras, and everything else, but the thought of somehow or another people not coming to the shows. I mean, there was an actual psychology in the invitation itself that doesn't exist today, where the invitation that went out had a painting on it, and that usually you hoped was the best painting in the show. It could be the worst painting in the show, which I'll explain at another time. But the best painting in the show, but maybe not the best painting in the show. All you wanted to do was send out an image to your clients that just said, here's the show, here's an image that tells you what's going to be in the show, but you're not giving away the show. You're not sending out multiple images. You're not sending out the prime painting in the show, because you're holding that back. This is part of that whole psychology. Here's one of the best paintings in the show. Here's all you need to get you excited about this show, but we're not giving the show away. You're going to have to come and see the gallery. And at the time, people came to galleries. They made it a Saturday out of it, or they all came to the opening, or they came to preview the show. So now we have this internet, and we have the ability to photograph things and put an entire show online. And now there's no need for the people to come to the gallery anymore, or for that matter, there's this kind of new enticement to get people into the gallery by showing all of these images. And there's also this feeling that, well, if I just gave it away and they have images of all of the paintings online, they're never going to see the installation that I spent 5 days working on. The art that I made out of the art doesn't matter anymore, because I now have all these images online, and everyone is just looking at the images, and they're looking at their computer screens, and there isn't that thrill and that joy of coming around a corner and seeing this artwork with this artwork, and out of the corner of your eye you see that artwork, and it's all creating this kind of movement, this I view installations as kind of, if you take an animation and you slowed it down to where it was still by still by still. And people many times have asked me, what drives your installations? When do you know it's done? All these things. And all I've ever known is that when it starts to turn on me, and I'm not talking about spinning, just turn, and it flows perfectly. There is no place where it stops. And if I'm looking at the installation and I see a place that stops, then I know that that's not the right work for it. I'll take that work out, and I'll keep working on it until it just does this on me. And we start to get into the online experience, and we start to send these out. I start to hire photographers because now I've got to get the photography up to speed. I'm not a photographer. I don't know how to shoot installations. And I start hiring these photographers in the hopes that all of the effort I put into the installations is going to somehow or another find its way into the hearts and minds of the people that are looking at the screen. How do I bring you to that installation? So the photographers I'm hiring great photographers. They're costing quite a bit of money. At the time, not everybody with an iPhone was a photographer. These were real professional photographers. They wanted $1,200, $1,500 to come and shoot an installation. And I'm hiring them, and they're coming out, and they're shooting those two paintings. And they're shooting those two paintings together. And I'm getting these back, and I'm looking at them and thinking, oh, damn, I can't get there's nothing here that makes me feel the way this show makes me feel. But that's just the way it is. I go through years of doing this. One day I'm at the Newport Beach Film Festival, and there's a documentary on Schulman. And, this is an iconic mid-century architecture photographer. And, what is it about his photographs that are so special? I mean, everybody shot mid-century houses. What was it about him? And they asked him that question. And he just he simplified it in a way that, really, really made sense that day. He just said, I'm no different than any other photographer. I mean, they all had to work with the same parameters in photography. But he said, I'm just trying to get the feel of it. And I left there, and it kept resonating in my mind over and over again. For days, I'm just trying to get the feel of it. It's not, aperture and all these things that a professional photographer knows how to do and what they can do in the darkroom, but a feeling for it. And that's all I ever knew. As an uneducated art dealer, all I could go by was a feeling for it. I could, look at that, and what looks like, sound absorption to somebody actually looks like a series of monochromatic paintings, and I think this is a really beautiful installation of artwork in this room, but obviously it's not. So I left there, and I kept thinking about it, and I went and I bought myself a Leica camera, and when I went there, I told the guy I need an idiot-proof camera that pretty much is just going to shoot. And I want to spend money on it, and I had saved up $6,000 or $7,000, and I had an idea in my mind that I was going to get this M whatever it was. And this was a guy who'd come over from Europe, one of the major guys in the company, and they had just released this camera called the Deluxe or something. And he said, here's your camera. And I looked at it and looked kind of small compared to all those big, beautiful cameras. And I said, oh, look, I'm not as poor as I look. I actually have saved up the money. I want to buy one of these cameras. He said, no. He said, you don't know what you're doing with that camera. He says, don't make a fool out of yourself with this camera. Buy the Deluxe, because the Deluxe is for you. And I said, okay. So I bought the Deluxe. And armed with the Deluxe, I walk into the gallery, and I start shooting images. And they all suck. They're really bad images. I don't know what I'm doing. So I hired this photographer, professional photographer, to come in, and she walked Stephanie and I through this process, showed us that it's an automatic camera. Maybe if you have it on automatic, it might shoot the picture for you. Oh, okay, that explains why I can't seem to get this thing to work. She gets it all to work, gives me the camera back. I start shooting pictures. Wow, lo and behold, the light's okay. This is okay, that's okay. There's this thing in the image that if you get these lines straight, it goes from yellow to green. And then if you get these lines straight, it goes from yellow to green. So all I have to do is figure out how to get green and green, and now that means this picture is being taken and it's not like this. So I've got this young intern, and she's going to school at the Laguna College of Art and Design, and she's eager to learn. And we're in this new process of Photoshop, photography. I'm this newfound photography expert. She's this Photoshop expert. Neither of us know anything about what we're doing, but we're struggling through this thing. And I start to find that the key to taking these installation images is to follow myself back into what I was doing while I was installing the show, as stupid as that sounds. So if I put this here, and I've got this here, and I've got this here, well, if I come over here and I shoot this, this, and that, the way I had installed these things going through multiple rooms, then I would be able to potentially bring you into that installation. And I start shooting these things, and I keep telling myself, it's the feel, it's the feel. It's not the photography. It's not any of that. It's the feel of it. And lo and behold, about a year or two later, this intern and myself and a new intern who's 17 years old, who's a lot more savvy than myself and my original intern are, start to produce these images through Photoshop. And mind you, right now, if I were to shoot through this room into that room, the combination of whatever this yellow lighting is in here, mixed with the natural lighting in there, mixed with the LED lighting, is going to cause some issues. You're going to have this dingy yellow light moving into a white light, and it's going to cause all these issues. All these issues don't mean anything when 17-year-old grabs the painting, puts a line out around it, isolates that painting, that painting, that painting, and then proceeds to move the light all the way up, fix the temperature of the light so it's all the same, and now you've got this light situation that's solved. You don't have all these different weird lights going on. You've got light. I thought, well, if we can do that, then we can remove shadows off of walls. And while we're at it, I've always hated that air conditioning duct, that lighting thing over there. I'm giving you all my secrets, and when you see the installation images from this show and you see emergency doors gone and everything else, you can go back and say, I can't believe that bastard removed the emergency doors. But I will. I'll remove emergency doors. I'll remove anything from these images that gets in the way of you having the feel of that show. So now I have, we're in another generation now where the girls in the gallery are far superior. I've become a much better photographer. Me and my deluxe are, we're serious photographers now. And I take images. I take 100, 200 images of a show. And from those images, we go through all of them, and then we find the ones that are great. And sometimes you have to find the ones that are bad and fix them. They're still crooked, even though I've got all my things there. The light's still wrong. Everything is still wrong. But between the shots that I've taken, because, again, I have this knowledge of how I installed this show, and we're going in and we're working, we're cleaning up, we're making all of this, and then we have this new goal now, which, like as I mentioned on the installation, how to make it look simple. How do you not see the hand and the eye of the dealer in that installation, where you walk through the show and you think, God, this is beautiful. This is really great. Whether you like the artwork or not, I've had people come to my gallery many times over the years and say, I hate this artwork, but there's something about the room itself and the artwork in the room, which is the ultimate compliment that you can be paid as an exhibition designer. So here we are now, it's 2019. Our ability to take an image of an actual painting. Back then you had all of these nightmares that the photographers went through with the transparencies. And once you've taken the shot, how do you fix it? What do you do if the color's not right? And now the photographer's gone, your $1,500 is gone, and you have an artist at the other line screaming, I just got the transparencies. That's not the same red in my painting. Okay, so now you look at that painting, and you've got a laptop. And you're thinking, oh, well, it's a linen beige I can fix that, I can fix this. So you get that painting, you get that painting straight, and you've got everything, all of the paintings in the installation are already done. Now you're ready to reach over and hit send. And when you hit send, our send hits 9,000 people. There are 9,000 people who are on our email list. There's another send on Instagram that hits 12,000 people. There's another send on Facebook that hits 5,000 people. Those are just the actual numbers of, say, followers that we may have or people on our lists. But it's amazing how many people you actually hit with that send button. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever had to stuff envelopes before. I've had to stuff thousands of envelopes at one sitting to where, your mouth is stuck together from all the glue, and then you smarten up and you use a sponge and your fingers are stuck together. It's a nightmare, that process, and then you have people who call you up and say, got the envelope, but I didn't get an invitation. Got the envelope, got 3 invitations. So, your stuffing is you're getting into envelope number 3,000, envelope number 5,000. By that time, you're just like, just shoving things in there and moving things along. But today, you line up all of your images and you hit send. And then that send goes off, and all of these images are already, they're already calibrated, they're already perfect. You've installed the show that you've taken 5 days to install, and now you've shot it properly. And now the people who know what they're doing with Facebook have turned out these beautiful images where you have this ethereal light, and you have these paintings standing up proud off those walls, and you have this floor with light shimmering across the floor, and you have these angles, and you as the viewer suddenly can move through this. You can picture yourself moving around in all of this. And now this has become second nature to us. And this is how we market artwork. And today, we will take a show like this, photograph every single work that's in the show, Photoshop it, make sure everything is perfect. Then we'll come back and we'll photograph the installation, go through the process, make that look beautiful. Then we'll start to email our list. And it might be, like in the case of this show, we sent out 1 image for this show. Me and Deluxe came through here and shot probably 40 pictures the other day. I didn't like one of them. I don't know what was wrong. I might have been in a bad mood. But I shot 1 image for Philip K. Smith, who does that horizontal work, the light work that you'll see inside there. And I was just sending it to him because I was really proud of this mid-career artist to be showing with a Irwin here. So here you have the god, Irwin, and you have Philip K. Smith, and the two of them are not only showing together, but they're an eye shot of each other. And I was going to make Phil's day and shoot that image. I take out my iPhone and I shoot this image, and while we're going through all of the images at the gallery to send an invitation out for the show for the opening Saturday night, I can't find an image I like. I can't. There's also the politics of sending out that image. Who's in that image? I have a bunch of artists that are living, that are totally into their careers right now. And then I have artists who have made history, but are hanging out with Jesus right now. So where do I begin to figure out what that installation image is going to be? And I stopped at one point after hours of going through all of these images and these false starts of, okay, that's the one, Photoshop that one. And Photoshop, that's not the one. Photoshop another one. Oh, okay, great, that's not the one. So then I pull out my phone, and I was just thinking about this image that I took for Phil because I remembered it was kind of dynamic in its own way. And I emailed it to Genevieve, the gallery director, and Golzar, our associate director, and they're like, oh my God, what's this? I said, oh, it's an image I took with my iPhone. And I take images with the iPhone sometimes as we're installing, which remind me to make sure I bring up the installation images while we're installing. So I see the excitement on their faces, and that image now comes out of the phone into the screen, and it comes up on, Big Mac's screen, and there it is. And it's, it's crooked. There's some problems with it. But there's this moment where Phil's work, and normally I would do this totally contrived. I'll be the first person to admit there's nothing accidental about me. I am so controlling, so contrived, so methodical. And Phil's work changes colors throughout its cycle. It's cutting-edge LED computerized work. It represents the future of light and space, and that's why he's in the show. So over here, the Irwin is a static color that doesn't ever change. And you're looking through the room into this pink bar. That's the opening for the show. And I see that this shot that I took, it's turned pink and green and turquoise, and somehow or another, it connects to the pink bar up front and comes in and forms this triangle with the Irwin. And the light from these works is coming up the walls, and there's this black sculpture with this Lita Albuquerque and this John McCracken, and it screams, this is a candy store for people who like California minimalism. And an accidental photo becomes the invitation for the show, which, you can kind of gauge what's a successful invitation pretty quickly. You hit send, and emails start coming back. And this thing it rivals everything we've sent out. People are like, oh my God, what a show. What an incredible show. I've got to see this show. People from everywhere, from New York, different parts of the country, different parts of the world are emailing, wow, I've got to see this show. I need more images of this show. So the comment that I wanted to make about installation, I used to have a gallery that was on PCH in Laguna, and as a young dealer without any money, I had to rely on cars driving by at 45 miles an hour. And that determined how many people came through the gallery, because they would drive by and they would see the artwork, and that would, determine whether they wanted to come and see the gallery again, because I had hundreds of thousands of cars driving by, a month. And during the installation process, I would get in my car and I would drive down the street, and then I would drive, look over at the gallery as if I were just somebody driving down the street, and then going back to the feel, I would get that feeling and think, oh, wow, that's incredible. Okay, that works. Or, boring, what you think looks really great inside the gallery, where now that work is competing with glare and everything else doesn't work outside the gallery. So I learned how to install at 45 miles an hour. And a lot of people also will always laugh, and they'll say that they see me constantly waving at people. I learned how to pick out people in cars at 45 miles an hour. I developed this ability to see cars speeding by, and because, you never want one of your collectors, when you're a starving broke dealer, to drive by and you snub them. So I better make sure you know who that person is that's driving by in that car, because they might be waving and you better wave back. So now we're in this new place where our installation images are going to people. People don't come to galleries anymore. And you have to bring them to the gallery. That's why these images are so important. That's why the installations have to work with camera. So now you'll hear me say, oh, we're taking pictures with the iPhone. So Stephanie, who is my wife, and we've been together 12 years, we've been installing together for 12 years. We've installed every show together. We bounce things off of each other. And now we are in this phase for the last few years where, as we're installing, we're taking photographs. Because, again, it's not necessarily how the show reads as you're walking through it. It's how does the show read as you get on your computer and you start viewing the show. So you're going through next, 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 and these images are coming up, and they're determining how this show looks. And the best way to get that idea is to take your phone out and say, oh, okay, I'll shoot this, and then you go home, and we do this especially at art fairs, where you go home that night and you start to look at these images, and the images will tell you how this show will look when it actually gets emailed out to your clients. So the camera has become the car at 45 miles an hour. Now, is dictating. So while you're installing and you're doing what you do as an exhibition designer, you're now also installing based on how is the client, the collector, the artist going to read this image, read these installation images as you're sending them out. So that has become an integral part, and being able to shoot these, to install shows based on what they're going to look like. I mean, you go to extremes now where Instagram is a big driver of perception of a show, whether it's a great show or not. People are making these determinations on Instagram. Well, Instagram has a certain size format, and unfortunately, unlike the gallery's emails that are a wider angle that you can see things in, now you have to deliver that message to a smaller format, which isn't installation friendly. It's friendly if you're an artist that's making portraits, but it's not friendly if you're trying to project a show that's got minimal abstraction in it. Like, you know, here's one color, here's another color, here's a shape, here's a whatever. So there are all these things that have moved us into 2019. So now this market is absolutely the craziest I've ever seen in 25 years. You wake up some mornings and you think, oh my God, how am I going to pay these bills? And you ask yourself, well, you know, these art fairs, they're costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. And how many times do we leave an art fair just hoping that plane crashes on the way home? Because you're out $40,000 and you don't have any clients that you think are going to buy any of the work. And meanwhile, everyone at home is like, please, I'm going to this art fair in Miami, and as soon as I get back, I'm going to have all this money, and I'll take care of all these bills. And no, you're on that plane or you're in that car and you're heading back and you don't have that money, and you're in big trouble. So you think, well, maybe I'll stop doing the art fairs. You can't stop doing the art fairs, because now your collector's coming in, and your collector, where before they might say, so who do you show? Now the first question they ask is, so what art fairs do you do? What art fairs do I do? Because that immediately determines at what level you're operating at. So when I get asked that question, I say, well, this year we did Expo Chicago, one of the top fairs in the country. We did the Armory Show in New York. We did this fair. We did Seattle. We did that fair. We did Dallas. We did this fair. And they immediately say, oh, okay, well, now this is a guy that I'm willing to work with. Because if he can get into those fairs, that means he's a player. Because you can't get into these fairs. These fairs are judged by your peers, and you're not getting into these fairs. You're not buying your way into these fairs. You apply to these fairs with $500 application fee, and sometimes you don't even get a rejection letter. They don't even give you the, hey, you really suck. You're left out there dangling like, oh, I just bought this guy a $500 lobster dinner, and he wouldn't even give me the benefit of the doubt to just email me back and say, came really close. There were like 80 galleries. You were 81, I swear. Or, we had a lot of galleries that were showing a lot of the same work that you were, but nothing. You don't even get that back. So you think to yourself, well, maybe I'll just drop back the fairs. But you can't do that. So then you think, okay, well, now I'm advertising on Artsy, First Dibs, ArtNet, all these sites. And unlike Facebook and Instagram, they're free, these sites cost money. Artsy cost me $1,000 a month. And, you ask yourself, well, and these are conversations that I have with myself when things are tight in the gallery. Where can I pull back? Well, I can't pull back on the art fairs because then collectors won't trust me, because I can't say that, oh, I did one fair this year. I can't pull back on the online because they want to see online. And if you're not online and you're not doing it right, you miss that whole kind of synergy that's taking place while you're online. So then you think, well, no one's coming to the gallery anymore, and I'm paying $7,000 a month in rent, and then I've got staff, and I've got paint the walls and replace the bulbs and insure everything. Maybe I don't need a gallery anymore. Maybe I'll just work out of, a business center somewhere and pay $1 a foot for a warehouse, go in, shoot my installations, and no one knows what's going on. But then you've got to have a brick and mortar gallery because you can't get into the art fairs. So you maintain a brick and mortar gallery. And when you're in the art fair, you're pulling out your iPad and someone is saying, well, show me more about this artist, or let me show you more of this artist's work. So you are doing this, and what's coming up? This beautiful space. And, part of what made that picture so amazing was this is a big, beautiful space. It's a really impressive, high ceiling. It's got, walls. It's not your typical white box. It's got a lot of interest that's going on. So now that client who's sitting in Chicago or Seattle, who doesn't know anything about you, at least knows that you've got a real space. You're a player. You're on this. So then all of a sudden, a bunch of money comes in, and you're a genius now. Man, am I ever the smartest guy in the world. Look at me go. I've got art fairs. While I'm at the art fair, I'm posting on Artsy that, look at me, I'm at Expo Chicago. Here's what I've got in Expo Chicago. And people who are going to Expo Chicago are going to Artsy in advance to see what all the galleries are bringing. So all of your art consultants, your advisors, your collectors have all gone online, and they're going to see what everybody's bringing. So now that person is clicking on to Helen Pashkin or Peter Alexander at the Peter Blake Gallery, and they're totally in love with this work, and they go and they post that on Instagram, or they post it on Facebook, or they send it to a friend who in turn does the same thing. So now all of that is happening. And then the art fair opens up, and you meet a bunch of people, and you put those people on your email list, and the emails start going out to these people, and they start doing that. They take an image, and they say, oh my God, I just got this in my email today. I'm blown away by this painting, and they put it on their Instagram account. And all of this is acting as this multiplier, and it's exponentially growing and growing and growing. So you find yourself in this position where you wake up one morning and you realize, well, there's no eliminating any of this. All of this has to be in play at the same time. You have to keep the brick and mortar gallery. You have to keep advertising on all of these expensive sites. You have to keep doing the art fairs. You have to keep all of this floating, and unfortunately, not one of them ever reveals itself as the loser. And just when you think that, ArtNet's really for secondary market Rauschenbergs that are selling, nobody's buying a James Hayward on ArtNet from me. Nobody's buying, some of the esoteric California minimalists that I represent on ArtNet because they're looking for Picasso or they're looking for this. And just as, you have that brilliant moment where you call your gallery director and say, end that contract with ArtNet because I'm done with it. Oh, well, I guess I better tell you, we just had a big sale on ArtNet. Oh, guess I'm not that smart, am I? So then ArtNet gets another year of, we made $30,000 on that sale. ArtNet costs $600 a month. By the time I paid the artist and I paid ArtNet, I bought myself a year's worth of ArtNet, and maybe this is the beginning. Maybe now everybody wants what I do. So that, and the same thing goes with, I remember one year, Steph and I did this fair in Silicon Valley. And it's no secret that, we've run out of places to find money. And there's this huge market, young tech people. And, you see these people making $1 million a year, driving a Tesla, living in their parents' garage. And, you think, well, I'm going to go to Silicon Valley because that makes a lot of sense. Mr. Art Fair owner, you're the smartest guy in the world. And we went to this art fair, and we did this art fair, and it was the biggest joke imaginable. It was so poorly attended. There was literally no one there, and the people that were there were so not the buyers for contemporary fine art. They hadn't even been to art fairs before. I had people coming up and asking, is this stuff for sale? So by the third day, I just got angry and sarcastic and started saying, no, not at all. I just paid $20,000 for this booth. I've got this really esoteric fetish about losing money, and I couldn't think of a better way of losing money than coming to an art fair and dealing with people like you who don't even know that the art fair, that this work is for sale. I have people coming in that, granted what I do is not for everybody, and I don't expect anyone to like it. Once in a while, I find someone who's like, God, I love what you do, and then I wonder what's wrong with them. So, but when you're dealing with at an art fair, unlike the gallery where people have a chance to look through the glass and see that weird stuff in there, and they can say, is that sound absorption, or is that a series of monochromatic paintings in a site-specific room installation? At an art fair, you have people who are coming through, and they're looking for figurative work, they're looking for landscape, they're looking for sculpture, they're looking for photography, video, all this stuff. And they just happen to stumble into my gallery. And again, by the third day now, I've been standing up under fluorescent lighting for 8-10 hours a day. I've gone through jet lag, I've gone through bad food in the hotel, I've gone through all of it. Now you want to come in and you want to joke about the artwork. So, of course, I'm going to joke right back with you. And what is this? Is this art? Yeah. I've got the laziest artists in the world. These artists are so lazy, they would never dream of painting a face or a tree. They want to just paint one color. One color. I talk to them about it. I tell them, please, I'm not a rich man. Don't do this to me. We go and we pick up the work. Inevitably, what have they done to me? They've let their laziness shine, and they've given me hard edge paintings. Or they've taken a piece of plastic and they've shoved a light fixture through it. Or who knows what they do. Anything other than to work hard. So we leave the fairs, and then something might happen. And you think to yourself, well, would I ever do that fair again? Well, the Silicon Valley fair that we had a dealer who came in from South America, and she made a comment to me that I literally almost threw up laughing in the booth. She said, back in her country, Chavez used to bring peasants in from the mountains, and he would pay them and offer them lunch and money if they would just board the bus for his monumental speeches that he gave to people. And she said that this rivaled these rallies that Chavez had, where he would bring all the peasants in and feed them and give them drinks and everything else and give them money. And that these people were so not collectors that it rivaled her country. And she had come all the way across the world to be in this fair. So while we're at this fair, Stephanie and I strike up this conversation with this very wealthy young dealer who has a gallery in London on Mayfair. And I could tell that, she's interested in what I'm doing. I can't tell if she's just laughing at it or if she actually likes it. But over the course of a few days, we strike up these conversations, and she says, at the end of it, she says, I've really grown to like this work. One of those works is there's a purple puff square that's in this space from Peter Alexander. He says, I don't know what it is, but I've really, after these few days and talking to you about it and your enthusiasm for it, I've really grown to appreciate California light and space. And I said, well, thank you. Leave, we go home. A couple of years later, she comes back and she says, I want you to curate a show in London of this California light and space work. I said, wow, really? Okay. So I go back to my artists and I'm like, you're not going to believe this. I'm going to curate a show in London, right on Mayfair, the main street in London. And all of them are like, you better guarantee that I get my artwork back. Oh, that's not where's the enthusiasm that we're all going to show in London? You're worried about getting your artwork ripped off. And why not? Most artists get ripped off every day, and it happens to them right here in Los Angeles. But now all of a sudden, shipping work overseas becomes a different issue. So I go back to rich dealer in London and said, got a little problem. They want me to guarantee this work. I can't guarantee this work. How would I even begin to sue you? I can't sue someone in Los Angeles. How am I going to sue somebody in London? And she says, okay, then why don't we work out a deal where you sell me the work? Okay. I work out this deal where I make a very small, minute percentage of my normal commission. But she buys enough to make the show worthwhile. And then she flies Stephanie and I first class to London. And we have this incredible experience. She goes on to do very well, given that this is artwork that a lot of people in Europe don't know anything about. Ends up buying more work from me. That art fair turns out to be this incredibly successful art fair. And, going back to that moment where you're about to turn off ArtNet and you make a sale that you make a bunch of money on and you realize how stupid you are, I realized that that art fair that I thought was a total joke turns out to be this huge money-making experience for me. And not only that, culturally, it's this incredible experience. And I take all these images of this show, and I bring back all of these images, and I send these images to my clients and to my artists, who then start to send these all over the place. And now, because of the internet, because of today's world that we live in, we are suddenly projecting this image of ourselves and of our gallery out into the world. And how would you ever do that before? What could I ever do in 1993 when I opened the gallery that would ever be able to promote something like this? Would I take a transparency of an installation in that gallery in London and send it to who? How many could I afford at $100 a piece? Could I take $1,000 and do 1,000? Who are the 10 people that I'm going to send this to? Are they critics? Are they museum curators? Are they collectors? Hell, the artists want one too. So where do you begin to understand exponentially the value of what the online experience has done? And, you know, at the risk of sounding like, you know, it's easy, it's not easy. You know, one of the things that really is distressing about all of this is that you can have the greatest artwork in the world, but if it's not a Rauschenberg, and it's not a Picasso, and it's not a Rothko, you could put said artwork online, put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook, somehow or another convince a gallerist to take your work to a fair and have him promoted or her promoted on any of these sites. And unless that name is big enough, it's not going to draw anyone in there. So you're hoping that somehow or another, inadvertently, someone goes looking for this and finds that. And, you know, that's a hard place to be when you're shelling out money and you are so proud and so happy of everything that you're doing, but yet no one's responding. And you have to find yourself making mistakes to make things happen. Mistakes like, you know, during that trip, Stephanie and I, while we were in London, took the opportunity to take, you know, one of those trains to Paris. And we looked at all the galleries in London and Paris. And one of the things that we saw there was that design, furniture, you know, we call it collectible design, can't call it the F word, was throughout these galleries. And fine art galleries were commingling with design. And you had Gagosian doing a Prouvé show with Chamberlain. You had all these things going on. You had these spaces where the back rooms took the time to have Bauhaus furniture or really impressive architectural collectible design. And we left there and we came home, and it was overriding constantly. And Stephanie and I are both buffs of architecture, and we were buying something here and there at auction, you know, a really rare chair from the mid-century French, whatever, modern stuff, mid-century modern stuff. And we come back home and we keep talking about this, and Stephanie had taken pictures of some of these galleries with these combination shows, but we never ever think that we could do this at the gallery, because you never, here in the States, we have a hierarchy: fine art, architecture, graphic art, decorative art. And you somewhere along the lines have to stick within those boundaries. But in Europe, fine art, architecture, and design have commingled and merged into one over the decades. And it doesn't have that, you know, you can put an artist who's designing furniture in with an artist who's a fine artist, and no one's going to think anything of it. So fast forward a couple years later, and we're heading into another summer in Laguna Beach, which is a really terrible time to be an art dealer in Laguna Beach, showing what I show. You have tourists that are coming in. They're there for the beach. They're there to buy something that reminds them of the beach, and one of my paintings isn't going to do that. So we get laughed at all summer long. So this summer, Steph and I decide that we're going to mount this exhibit, this retrospective of design from Bauhaus, from the 30s, all the way to 70s. And so it's called Tendency of the Moment, Bauhaus to Modern. And it kind of chronicles the beginning of contemporary minimalist furniture, and it ends right at the end of modern before postmodern. We have this exhibit. Of course, nobody buys a single thing. We sold one table and we sold it. I distinctly remember on the first of the month, I went to work that Saturday morning, and I needed $15,000 desperately. I had every rent due, my home, my apartment, everything. And this woman from New York walks in, and I hear, "Oh my God, he's got a Mangiarati table in here." And I'm thinking, what? You know what a Mangiarati table? I heard that. This woman knows what that table is. So of course, now she's like my best friend in the world, and we hit it off. She makes me this horrible offer of $15,000. I love this table, did not want to part with this table, and I sold this table because I needed that $15,000. It was the exact number on the first of the month. So show closes. Genevieve, the gallery director, who's a lot like the smartest person in the world, she says, "I'm going to take this design, I'm going to put it on First Dibs." Oh, no. Don't ruin my art career here. And mind you, I didn't mention that in this design show, there was no art. I could not put artwork in the gallery because my artists would all leave the gallery. If they saw me put their painting with a sofa or a chair or a table, that would be the end. That's it. I'm done. I'm out of here. So we exhibited this show, and then to make sure that it didn't feel like furniture, we built pedestals for it. Pedestal after pedestal after pedestal was built. Oh, that needs a pedestal now. Oh, now you have 3 pedestals in the room. Why were those 2? So we kept building pedestals over the course of weeks while we installed this show. And long story short, Genevieve puts this on First Dibs. People start wanting to buy the furniture that I don't want to sell. This is my personal stuff. I don't want to sell my furniture. But her reasoning is that by putting the furniture on First Dibs, it will bring people in to the gallery, and they'll see the gallery's site on First Dibs. Well, again, this girl's really smart. And despite myself, she figures this thing out. And now, this is not a proven thing, but sure enough, Prouvé, Jeanneret, all these people, that Eames speaker from the 60s, all of these things start bringing people in from all over the world, because what I deal in is esoteric. It's California minimalism. There's a very small amount of people that would ever imagine owning one of these things. But in terms of collectible design, these are people all over the world. So we're starting to get people from Singapore, from Paris, London, New York, Chicago, all over, Sydney. And it dawns on me that, once again, I've had an accident. It's the equivalent of what I was saying earlier, that, if you go home tonight and you think to yourselves, well, maybe I should do that art fair. And while I'm at it, maybe I should do Artsy or ArtNet and, pay the money. And then 3 months later, you realize you're hoping that plane crashes on the way home from the art fair. You're somehow or another threatening your artsy person with, cruel and unusual punishment for talking you into that contract that now you have to pay that you're not getting any hits on. The Instagram that's free isn't really free, because now you have to pay somebody with the deluxe camera to come out and shoot the image for you and make sure that your images are cool, because if your images aren't cool, not only are you not going to get any hits or sell anything, but you're actually spending your time and money to let everybody know what a loser you are. So you deal with all of this and you think, well, where's the answer? And then you make a mistake and you put a chair on a website that drives people to your website, and suddenly realize that, wow, I collect this type of what I hadn't thought of was the people that collect that type of furniture are actually the same people with sensibilities that like the kind of artwork I sell. And the only difference between my artwork and the artwork they're used to collecting, which is Judd and LeWitt and all of these other artists, is that there's zeros missing from it. So they're getting the same quality. They're getting artists who've made history in Los Angeles for decades, who are in every major history book, but there's zeros missing from it. And now all of a sudden, along with that chair, they're going to buy that painting from me, or they're going to buy that cube, that piece of plastic cube to go on top of that console. And we start getting into art fairs, and the art fairs are requesting that we bring in a show that combines these worlds together. And I'm still nervous about all of this, but at some point I wake up and realize that I'm not nervous anymore about this. I'm going to merge those worlds together, and I'm going to give myself an added dimension. Part of these photos and part of these efforts online is now being paid off exponentially as a result of having that furniture, which was supposed to destroy my gallery and bury me. So despite all the mistakes you can make, this medium, if done properly, can deliver in ways that you have no idea. I mean, I could literally maybe close the gallery today and survive off of our online sales. I could potentially stop doing art fairs and survive on online sales. I don't know how long it would last, because there's always this, what I like to call the pipeline, you know, when I threaten my artists with, go ahead, you go ahead and do that, and you'll see what happens. You'll make sales for the next year because there's still oil in that pipeline, but then that pipeline will dry out and you won't have any more business. And I can promise you that. And I've had experience with that because I know how that works. For that next year, there are people that are still coming in that are thirsty. They're looking for that water that I served them up on a tray in my gallery. But then after a while, they don't want that water anymore. They want water from somebody else. They want sparkling water. And they're coming back to the gallery, and now I've got flavored water. And now your business is cut, and that gallery that you left because you were going to make 100% out of your studio is gone. While we're on that conversation, the ability for an artist to sell their own work without a dealer is unprecedented in the history of art. You know, before you had, where was Van Gogh going to sell a painting? I mean, maybe he was getting drunk with some guy in a bar, and he ended up, you know, selling him a painting, a portrait of his wife or whatever it was that he was doing. Then you go through the transparency slide thing. You can see how many times I bring that up because that was my biggest nightmare. Working in a restaurant for the first 5 years of the gallery and watching my salary go to pay photographers for transparencies. So now you're in this place where, do you really need a gallery anymore? Do you really need a dealer anymore? Because if you're savvy and you can take a picture of that monochromatic room, site-specific installation of paintings, and Photoshop it, switch out, you know, all of this, get rid of that ugly exit sign and that max occupancy 149, get rid of that speaker. Somehow or another, shoot it at an angle where these sound baffling things in the ceiling actually become part of this room installation. And now this is a sculptural room of now it's not monochromatic anymore because you have two colors. You can come up with a duochromatic or whatever that word is. And now you can take that and you can market it yourself. You could go to Artsy and say, I'm buying this. You can go to a lot of art fairs will allow the artist to market their own work. You don't need that gallery. Some art fairs will not only not allow the gallery in, but you have to have a brick and mortar space on top of it to prove that you're a gallery, which is also changing now. But your ability to take an image, make that image right, set up a beautiful Instagram or Facebook page, go to Artsy or ArtNet, do some art fairs, start to mingle with people, go to art openings, maybe put up with an hour of this rambling art dealer in the hopes that you might talk to him later on and get a solo show that sells out and makes you a museum quality artist within a matter of months. You know, all of the things that you could possibly do, you suddenly have that opportunity. And you know, I've read these stories about people selling their paintings on Instagram while they're still wet. You know, this artist has just finished this painting, taken a picture of it. It goes on Instagram. It's sold while it's drying. Oh, sorry, sir, I can't ship that painting yet because it's not dry. But once it's dry, after I've spent all your money, then I'll ship you the painting. But it's a really exciting time to be in the arts. It's also a very scary time to be in the arts because we keep getting further and further removed from the real feel of art, which is the artwork, which is the artist talking about the emotional pull that made that artwork. What was it that made that artwork for you? We're known in the industry as this gallery that just sends out images. We don't write a lot about artwork, and that's just me. I'm not all that academic or scholarly. And a lot of my artists have to deal with other artists who are with galleries that send out an image the size of a postage stamp, and then this dissertation that's this long talking about all this stuff about a monochromatic painting. And we don't do that. I've always felt like I would rather you kind of get the feel for what the artwork is, and if you want to go further than that, I'm happy to introduce you to the artist at the opening, or the artist has written a statement that, kind of talks about all of this. I mean, granted, I'm cynical and jaded. I've seen artists who I remember one year I was asking the artist, we were like on the verge of the opening, I'm like, are you going to get me the titles for these paintings? And he pulls out his favorite Bob Dylan album, and he starts titling all of the paintings based on, So I've got people coming up to me and saying, I really like that painting, but what is it about the idiot? What does this have to do with anything? It's like, the idiot. The idiot is this idiot right here who watched him get all those titles, who begged him to just call it Untitled number 13, Untitled number 18, 2003, or whatever the year was that he finished that painting. But why don't you guys ask me some questions? I've been rambling on. I can keep rambling. They'll close this place down. So ask me some questions while you still have me here.
What do you think of the LA Art Show?
The LA Art Show, we did, I think 2 or 3 times, was probably the most profitable art fair we've ever done. And we started to do the other art fair and couldn't do 2 fairs at the same time, which was the one at the Barker Hangar. Art Los Angeles Contemporary. But the LA Art Show, dollar per dollar, is the most impressive art fair you will ever do. And they're very open to allowing artists to come in and take a small booth and represent yourself. Last I heard, and art fair owners are the biggest liars on the planet. If they had 6,000 people come through, it's 60,000. They have people that are sitting at the door counting people. That person is on magic mushrooms because there's 10 people. No, that's not 10 people. That's one person, okay? And that's the same person that just came back from lunch who has a booth that are starving over there. You don't count the art dealer who's walking, pacing back and forth, thinking, oh my God, why did I do this? The LA Art Show could actually be the one fair I can think of that actually will bring in 60,000 people. And this is 60,000 varied people. This isn't 60,000 or 13,000 hardcore collectors that stuck their finger up in the air, and with an advisor who was a cocktail waitress 2 years ago who read a few issues of Art Forum, has them by the arm with their high heels on, walking him into booths, telling him how you could never get this artwork if it wasn't for me bringing you into this. And that monochromatic painting that I'm going to get you tonight for $100,000, it'll be worth $300,000 before you know it. So the answer to if you can get into the LA Art Show, and I know they do this because they always have booths that are lined up with an artist's work. And if you feel compelled to give it a shot, and you obviously, I'm assuming that all of you live in this area. I don't think anyone flew here to talk to me tonight. You're going to put those paintings in a van. You're going to drive those paintings to the LA Art Show. You're going to work it yourself. You're going to drive back home at the end of the night, so you're not staying in a hotel. You're going to take those bills and you're going to carve those bills down to the bare minimum, and you're going to get yourself a booth for a few $1,000s, and you're going to go and you're going to exhibit your artwork, and you're going to at least have a shot at it. And while you're there, you're going to print up a postcard, you're going to have a website, you're going to have an Instagram account, a Facebook account, you're going to be pressing, pictures of, oh wow, beautiful people walking in and out of your booth. You might even Photoshop some of the ugliness of those temporary walls out, which we do. You'll be able to at least give it a running shot, because there's only, one of the really terrible things about the art world today is, just like the rest of this world, it seems like you're either really poor or really rich. There's no middle anymore. There's no middle class anymore. There's no middle of the artwork anymore. There's no, for me, I've always prided myself on working with mid-career artists. And the mid-career artist to me was always that artist that was 50s, 60s, 70 years old. I have never, let me look around this room, I have never had an interest in representing 20-year-olds. They are the most pompous idiots you've ever imagined in your life. They have never had a chance to fall on their face. They've never had a chance that someone tell them that, you call that work? That is trash. They've never gone through a recession, so when they're talking to you, they know everything. Their artwork, that's a $100,000 painting. And dealing with that, never been I've never had a desire to work with young artists. I learned in 1993 that I had no patience for them. I don't have any kids. I hate kids. And I've had kids who are in their 70s. And I've always loved the mid-career artist, because to me, the mid-career artist is the artist that really is doing what they love to do. It's their passion. They've already gone past the potential to be a hedge fund person or whatever it is that they've done. Or for that matter, they might have retired knowing that they never wanted to be that person. And they've come to terms with that point in their lives where this is what I do. This is all I do. I might have a spare job. I might teach. I might wait tables. I might, might be a drywaller, whatever it is that you do. But there are those moments when I walk into my studio, and I'm not thinking about the curator from the Whitney, and I'm not thinking about the art writer from Art Forum, and I'm not thinking about Peter Blake and his bills that have to get paid from the show that he's having. I'm not thinking about any of that. I'm at one with my art, and I have that opportunity to block the entire world out. And that's a really special moment that really a mid-career artist only knows. The young artist, they're still, thinking along the lines of, and especially today's young artist that thinks they're just going to get up there and they're going to start selling. And next thing you know, here comes Pharrell and all these people, and they're buying all their artwork, and they're jet setting all over the world and drinking champagne on yachts, and it doesn't work that way. So the middle's gone. Which is an unfortunate aspect, because the middle is really where the art world happens. So the galleries, the big galleries, have come in and swallowed all of the middle galleries up. They've taken all of our artists away from us. And then the super young artist that can do a pop-up somewhere in an empty storefront with $500 works on paper of Syrian refugees or whatever it is that the flavor of the moment is that day. They are so cutting edge that they can pretty much just read an art forum, see what's going on, see that, okay, right now, I remember during the 90s there was a moment where lesbians had their moment. And this was an incredible movement with artists like Kim Dingle, who I collected myself, and thought she was the most, and still do think she's one of the top painters I've ever known in terms of marrying intelligence and the ability to move paint. But that was their moment. That was that moment. Today, I would say that if you're painting images of African Americans, the chances of you selling a painting or getting into a show are exponentially higher than, say, for example, being a straight white male peddling, artwork out of a gallery. So your ability to move very quickly throughout the art world, another thing of what's happening with all of this information and all of this these images that we have, it gives you a fast idea of what's hot right now. You don't have to, I'm sure you guys get emails from all your different art sites that come in all day long. Look at those emails. It takes you about 3 days before you realize what's hot in the art world. You don't have to be an art advisor. You don't have to be a curator. You don't have to travel the world and go to every art fair and every biennial to know what's hot. You can see within an email or 2 or 3 or 4 within a matter of days what's hot. And if that's the kind of artist you want to be and you want to tailor to what's hot, it's there, it's revealed for you. Yes?
If somebody wants to apply to a gallery with their work, how do we go about the process? Is each gallery different, or how do you do it, or what would you recommend?
Well, I'll give you a primer on this, and this is very important. I'm glad you asked that. Back in the old days, we would get these envelopes. I hate yellow envelopes. So if you ever want to send something to the gallery, make sure it's white. So we would get these envelopes full of slides. And oh my God, there were so many slides in there. And then you would look at them, and it doesn't take long before you realize that, okay, that's not a microphone, that's a microphone. but you kind of look through a lot of slides, and then you feel bad because you know how much how much money that artist spent on those slides. But now you've got to send those slides back, and a lot of times they didn't send you a self-addressed stamped envelope that you can just go, and then you have to walk it to the mailbox. But that's okay, because someone took the time to send that off to you. Today we have this incredible opportunity. You can literally take your iPhone. You could go over, take a shot of that painting, put together an email, very simple email. All galleries do not take submissions. Every single art gallery I know has something on their website that says, we are not currently accepting submissions. Because you have such an incredible opportunity to find artists that you don't have the time to get submission after submission after submission. But there are occasionally, hourly, people who go ahead and send you stuff anyway. And, you know, some people, you could see where they just, you know, they don't understand the time constraints that a dealer has, and they'll send something with a link to something, you know, some clever, you know, esoteric thing of, I'm working with artificial intelligence and have trained this robot to, and they go into some, you know, some weird stuff, and if you click right here, you know, it's just as easy to click junk. Then you get other artists who are really smart, and these artists are like, oh my God, Mr. Blake, you have the best eye in the history of art. Your shows are so incredible. Your space, was it designed by a major architect? I have dreams of showing in your space. Okay, we're off to a good start here. Then all it takes is 5 images. 5 images, not 50, not some video of you talking, not, you know, images of you with your artwork as if that means something. Guess what? It means nothing. I'm married. I don't care what you look like, you know? Send me 5. So after that, you're the most brilliant person in the history of art. Send me 5 images, because within those 5 images, I will know that that's not a microphone. Oh my God, that's a microphone. That's exactly what I'm looking for in my gallery. Now, it's very rare that you'll actually get into a gallery as a result of sending one of those emails or sending an envelope full of slides, but there's always that chance that it's going to happen. And I can tell you what isn't going to happen if you don't do that. Nothing. If you don't take that chance, if you don't send that email to somebody. Now, on the same hand, understand that people are busy, and most people, you know, my email is peterblakegallery@mac.com. That's my email. I don't have a Peter at peterblakegallery@mac.com. There's a Genevieve at peterblakegallery@mac.com. There are, you know, other people that have that, but my email is my personal. That is the gallery email. It's always been my email. I've never changed it. So when you email the peterblakegallery@mac.com, that's my email. I'm getting that email. And that's rare. I'm sure that, you know, Arnie Glimsher isn't looking at emails coming in with your artwork on it. But you never know what could happen. But if you just send a few images, if you take the time to look at that gallery and you see that, oh wow, this gallery shows California minimalism. They show California light and space and hard edge paintings. The materials range from acrylic, plastic, resin, to, you know, one color on canvas. I'm a figurative painter. I'm a landscape painter. I don't see anything in this gallery that would even remotely make me think that this dealer might have this epiphany at one point and say, well, you know what? I've been focused on all this stupid shit all this time, but I see the light right now, and I'm going to show that figurative painter. Or that naive artist that is making artwork that just doesn't even begin to resemble a properly painted painting, because that's what I imagine that they like. I mean, there's nothing wrong with naive painting. Naive painting, I mean, go tell Basquiat that he's not a great painter. You know, but you can see in the gallery's website, here's another benefit of today's world. You can see in that website that. So if you're making resin cubes that are, you know, translucent, and they have a certain way of light, and they're transparent and translucent, and they reflect and refract and absorb light, and you live in California. By the way, all the artists in this gallery live in Los Angeles. I live in Munich. Maybe that's a sign. Okay, I've kind of done my homework. I've taken the time. I've been respectful of this person's time. I think my artwork actually fits into this gallery. And I'm going to take 5 images, because again, that person probably knows what they're looking for, and within 5 images, I can tell you whether this is going to work in my gallery or not. And that has nothing to do with whether I think it'll sell or not, or whether a curator is going to think it's museum worthy, or whether a critic is going to write about it. It is as easy as Stephanie and I ask ourselves, would you be willing to bring that home and put it in your living room right now? That's how simple. That's what a simpleton I am. Would I be willing to bring that line of paintings right now and hang that in my little living room? Probably. You know, I kind of like those. But it's that simple, but yet even as complex as the art dealers want to make it out to be, they can see, oh yeah, that's something I want to show. Oh no, I have no intentions of ever showing that. I have no interest in this. But for me, there's something about the way the light's traveling through that water right now. It's made out of plastic. It's all these things that could potentially make it worthwhile for me. Okay. Oh.
What about some of the, so you're talking about the art fairs. What about festivals, weekends, sort of things?
They're great. They're great. Don't ever let anybody tell you not to do those. You know, I've had artists tell me, I can't believe you hung my artwork in a cafe. Well, guess what? I've got 5 restaurants going right now. You're in a couple more. You know, festivals are great. Festivals, cafes, those are really incredible opportunities to expose your artwork to people. And never mind what, you know, your friend says, or your fellow artist says, oh my God, you did that festival? Yeah, I did that festival. And over the course of 2 days, I got enough feedback from that festival that, you know, kind of confirmed some things that I had in the back of my mind. And, you know, while you were all that holed up in your room reading Art Forum and reading some esoteric nonsense that you could literally take each of those articles and switch the names of the artist and the writer, and they would be about the same thing, I actually took the time to go out. I sat in a cafe. I watched people come in. I watched them drink their coffee, look up at my artwork, and go, it's amazing what you'll get out of those restaurants. Again, at the beginning of the gallery, I had no less than 5 restaurants going all the time. I would just go into a restaurant and say, I want to hang artwork in this restaurant. Be like, okay, great. So I would hang artwork. I would go and take the time to drill, sometimes into brick walls, to hang the artwork. And, you know, sometimes you got tomato sauce splashed on it. Sometimes you sold something. Sometimes you took the show down, and the artist was devastated that 2 months later they hadn't sold a thing, and yet thousands of people had sold the artwork, and now they're just total losers. You go through all of that. But sitting around waiting for a gallery, especially in 2019, when there are no galleries, you know, we're going to wake up in 5 years from now, and there might not be any more galleries. There might be Pace, Gagosian, Zwerner, Hauser-Wirth, and there might be the young artists that are showing in a storefront that closed a few weeks ago, and they got their artwork up, and they're working with, you know, I've seen shows where people took the toilet paper roll that was left over and wrapped it with aluminum foil and a string, and somehow or another it means all of this stuff, and you're sitting there listening to all of this, and you're thinking, which one of us is stupid here? You know, is it me? Is it you? Is it both of us? Are you making both of us stupid right now, trying to tell me that that represents that to you? But no, I think festivals are great. And, you know, look at the way artwork has been marketed over centuries. You know, people used to just live by commissions of wealthy patrons that, you know, would have themselves painted by these artists. And then out of that wealthy patron might come the ability to have enough money to be able to do what you really wanted to do. Maybe you could go back and, as one of my artists did, paint a commission of someone they hated the way they really saw that person after they painted that person, and, and that person saw that painting. I don't. But I scour Instagram to see what excites me. I'm just like everybody else. I'm on image overload. And, after the 5,000th image for the day, I'm looking for that one image that I can say, okay, I saw it. This is it. Get off the computer. That person, that dealer, is a dealer of what I'm not. I'm, again, a mid-career artist dealer. I like the mid-career artist. I like the grown-up artist. But that person, I'm not going to find something on Instagram that's undiscovered because that's a young artist, and I have no interest in young artists. But is there potentially Sotheby's might have put on their website or on their Instagram account an image of a Mary Corse painting that's coming up at auction, and suddenly I'm alerted to that, and then I go to their website and realize that on October 1st, there's a 6 by 6 foot Mary Corse that's going, that's got an estimate of $80,000 to $120,000, and I might be able to buy that painting because everything that people have seen or heard that day leads to us going into a recession. These are the things that I'm more apt to look at than looking for new artists. But that has nothing to do with the real world. The real world, the sexy part of the art world, is all about uncovering that gem that no one knows about. And there have been times that I've opened up an ugly yellow envelope and pulled up some slides and saw the Lord's light come through it. There have been times that I got an email, read through it, and then got to images, and I thought, wow, this is incredible. And actually, we have a show right now in the gallery by an artist named Jan Martin Voskiel. And Jan Martin is the only non-California artist I represent. Years ago, I happened to be going through some things online. It must have been one of those sites that had art on it. I found his artwork, and he was making these hybrids of painting and sculpture, and really beautiful work. And at the time, I was representing an artist named Tony DeLapp, whose work I really loved, and he's one of our, he's our hero in Orange County. And I followed this guy, I got on his website, and I followed him for a couple of years. And then one day, I picked up the phone, called over there thinking maybe his studio manager speaks English, or maybe he speaks a couple words of English. But I felt compelled to, because I'd enjoyed his work for a couple of years, I felt compelled to call him up one day and say, hey, I really like what you do, and I have this gallery in California, and I show this artist named Tony DeLapp, who's at that time in his 70s, and I just wanted to let you know I really love your work. And he said, oh, and he says, oh, what? But, he went online, saw my gallery. He's like, well, I really like your gallery. Is there any chance we can show together? I said, oh, no. I only show California artists. I'm focused on California light and space, but I really love your work nonetheless. And he said, what if I just sent you some paintings? What if I paid to send you some paintings, and you could actually see my paintings in person? I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose at that point. So a few weeks later, I get this wooden crate, and inside of this wooden crate are some paintings. And I open them up, and I immediately buy one for myself, and then I call some of my friends and clients up, and they come out and they buy them. I call them up and say, hey, great news, I'm going to send you a check. All the paintings that were in that crate are sold. And there's this pause, and I know the pause is both ways. It's like, okay, but it's not about money, because I don't ever do anything about money. Money doesn't make any difference to me. I show what I want, and the money comes eventually, or it doesn't come, makes no difference. There's an artist in this gallery right now who has lost more money than every artist who's ever been in my gallery combined. And there would not be a minute that I looked at his artwork or considered a show any differently than potentially an artist that's in here, that whenever I look at that artwork, I hear this cash register, this deafening cash register, because I know everyone that walks by one of those is going to want one of those. So I said, why don't you do this? Why don't you send me another crate? This time I'll pay for the shipping. And let's see what happens. So we took his work to Palm Springs. There's a fair in Palm Springs. It's not the greatest fair in the world, and it was just kind of getting started. And I thought there was something about this work that would fit into that kind of mid-century vernacular that's taking place during Modernism Week. It wasn't a fair that I would get judged on. Not that there was anything about his work that I didn't feel proud of. I would never show the work. But at least it, to me, felt mid-century, And I normally don't try to tailor artworks going to a fair based on, where we're going. I just show what I show, and that doesn't matter whether that's in Chicago or Seattle or New York or Miami, wherever we're going. I'm going to show what I'm going to show. But we took Jan Martin, and this was our non-California artist, and we took to Modernism, to the Palm Springs Fine Art Fair, and I think we sold 14 paintings. And everyone was talking about this work, and I came back home, and once again, I had this big check for Jan Martin. But by now, I'm starting to question myself, and I'm thinking, well, along with Jan Martin, there's this guy named Alan Ebnather in Germany who's making these beautiful paintings where he's crushing rocks and making his own pigment and making his own paint, and he's crushing glass and marble, and he's doing these, he did green paintings for years, and he's doing these green paintings, and you move around them, and there are these things that are going on, and I thought, what if I had like a show of European artists, European, monochromatic painting or whatever? So my mind is opening itself up to this possibility that maybe there is a future to all of this. So I contact Alan Ebnather, and I tell him, hey, I really like your artwork. Oh, wow, that's great. I grew up in California. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, I grew up in California. So I said, hey, if you wouldn't mind, send me a couple paintings. So he sends me a couple paintings. There's this artist in New York named Matthew Delegate who's doing this really intelligent work, and he's now been accepted into the Whitney Biennial. And there's another artist, and I think to myself, well, how important is this California exclusive to me? It's not that important, is it? I thought, so I open it up, and all of a sudden, from Jan Martin to Alan Ebnather to Matthew Delegate, I pick up, who? Matt McClune in France. He lives in this area, where they make wine up in these hills, where the earth is just incredible. And he lives in this old house made out of like stones that were put together by someone in the 1700s. And we pick up this guy named Don Voisin in New York who's doing these really beautiful, what feel like California hard edge paintings, but have this New York feel. And he's really all about the history of abstract painting in New York. And I bring all these artists into the gallery, and for the next few years, we're engaged in all of these non-California artists, along with California. And I watch this incredible thing take place where these artists are influencing each other. So my California artists are looking at the European artists, and they're being influenced by it. And the European artists are now, I remember the day that Jan Martin called me, and he said, hey, I just bought myself a sprayer. I said, a sprayer? Like a spray gun? He said, yeah. And I got some automotive paint while I was at it. So if you come to the gallery and you see Jan Martin's show, you go online and see it, you'll see that his paintings are very natural and organic. He works on linen, and he allows the color of the linen in every one of the paintings. And the paints are usually very flat and full of plaster, and he brushes them on, and they're just these really warm and organic paintings. And then next thing I know, here come these high gloss paintings with car paint. And like, what's going on? I knew what was going on at that point. He had come to the States. He had seen some of our other artists. He had been inspired by, rather than light being absorbed into the color of the painting, he now saw this opportunity to shoot the light back at you, to reflect the light. Back in those days, what I loved about Jan Martin's paintings is he brought you into the studio. So these paintings are coming off the wall, and in between the wall and the edge of that painting, you could see into the studio. You could see the glue marks. You could see the staples, the nails, the pencil marks. He brought you into the process, and then as you moved around to the front of the painting, you had the formal aspects of abstract painting. Well, now all of a sudden, he's closed the studio off to you. He's not letting you back in that studio anymore because he wants to be like one of these finish fetish guys that I show. Not that he wants to be, he's very much his own artist, but you can see these influences. And you wonder at that point, I really kind of like the organic nature of this work. I don't know if I want another artist working with car paint and, some kind of a high gloss finish that's been sanded and polished 100 times. I kind of like seeing the hand in this paint. I like the flatness of this paint. And, but at the same time, I would never tell an artist not to do something, because I learned over the years that what is not really quite there today gets somewhere tomorrow. Or for that matter, it doesn't necessarily keep going in that direction, but it comes back over here and it informs the work they were doing in the first place. And that's why you have to be very, very careful never to tell an artist that, you don't like that, or that's never going to sell, because you don't know where that art is going. That could be potentially on its way to something really special, or on its way to informing the work that's currently being done and make that even more special than it ever was. It's part of that process that's very important. So Jan Martin has returned his entire show. I don't think he sent us any high gloss paintings or any sprayed paintings. I think he's gone back to and he even revisited some paintings from like 2009 to 2013, and there are opportunities to go back in and look back into the studio and see these paintings sticking out. He might have changed the colors to what I call California surf culture colors, so the influence is still there. There's some hot pink and some lime green and colors that you would see on board shorts here in Huntington Beach, definitely not, in the Netherlands. So the influence, and again, you could tie this back to the theme of our talk tonight, which is how would people be influenced all over the world by what's going on in different parts of the world if it wasn't for the internet? How could you possibly know what was going on if it wasn't for that? If you didn't hit subscribe on the gallery's website, and you're an artist that's working in Belgium, or you're working in Detroit, wherever you're working, and then every month you're getting these things, and what looked ridiculous at first, but somehow or another grabbed your attention, now you're totally into it. Now you're going back and it's informing your artwork at the studio. This whole thing is, when an artist tells me that they're working on this thing and they really hate it, that to me, immediately, I think, oh wow, they're onto something. I think the exact opposite. When an artist tells me they hate it, I get in my car and I drive right to that studio, because when an artist really hates something, they will, they hate it because there's something that happened there that is special. They know it's special, but either they can't figure out how they got there, how to get there again, or what to do with it, because it's so different and so unique from what they normally do, and they'll hate it. There's a comment that I made earlier tonight, and I'll let you guys get home. Because I'll keep talking. There was, I mentioned something about the invitations to the shows, and in the beginning, as a naive dealer, I would tell the artists, send me an image of your best painting, and they would send me an image. Okay, it's good image, good enough image. Again, we're not trained to look at images of paintings to really understand what a painting looks like. But then the show would come in, and I'd see all these incredible paintings, and I'd think, why did you send me this painting, of all paintings? Because it was the stepchild. It was, how, for those of you who have kids, you might have a kid who's the valedictorian and the quarterback of the football team and better looking than Paul Newman, and then you've got this redheaded stepchild that just gets D's in school, likes to smoke pot, likes to do all the things, but yet you love that kid, and you know that kid is the most special thing in the world. And these paintings that I would get from invitations were literally the stepchild of the series. And because the artist felt like, no, that's a great painting. That is as good as any other painting in the room. Yeah, I know those are really great paintings, but that one in particular. So after that, I learned, oh, no, you don't. I want to see all the paintings. I'm coming to the studio, and I will determine which of those paintings get photographed, because I'm not going to have you send me the redheaded stepchild.
How is all this changing in town like Laguna Beach?
How does art change Laguna Beach, or how does Laguna Beach change as a result?
Galleries are closing, but yet
It's known as a gallery town, but the majority of the artwork that you see in Laguna Beach is commercial artwork that's geared towards a tourist. You know, I forget what percentage of art gets purchased while on vacation. It's an obscene amount. You'd like to think that people really do their homework, they follow an artist, they study the artist's work, they buy because they're building a meaningful collection and not just decorating their homes. But in reality, a lot of artwork is purchased, hey honey, we're going to Santa Fe, or we're going to New York, or we're going to Miami, or we're going to Laguna. And you think to yourself, well, what are we going to buy there that's going to remind us of that special trip that we as a family took together? What strikes home more than that Laguna Beach lifeguard tower that we've brought home, and for the rest of our days, we remember that trip we took in 1992, and we remember that lifeguard tower. So it's changing Laguna Beach, but Laguna Beach, you know, we actually have some really great galleries for those of you who like realism. There's a dealer there named Sue Greenwood, who does a great job with realism. I mean, she has an incredible eye for realism and shows some really great painters. Right, a couple doors down from her is a gallery called Salt, and Carla represents Latin American artists. So, you know, if you're Latin American and you're looking for an opportunity to potentially have a leg up on the competition, she shows really interesting, well-done work. Down the street from them is another great Laguna dealer that admittedly shows very decorative work, but owns it and says that, no, you know what, mostly I sell to our interior designers that, you know, and what's wrong with that? You know, so many people in my industry, you know, cringe when they see that designer coming in with swatches and talk about, I need a 62 by 48, it's going over a couch, here are the fabrics. You know, most dealers would run for cover when they hear that kind of stuff. Not this guy, because this guy knows after 25 years and 3 recessions that I'm 1 recession away from closing. So bring on the swatch, bring on the couch. I'm coming to your house. We used to go to people's houses and hold paintings up with our shoes off over couches to see if the designer, the husband and wife all like this. Now, I just say, okay, send me a picture of that wall. Okay, there's the wall, and there's the designer chair. So now Genevieve gets on the computer and she photoshops that painting right there, and then I send that to you, and it's as good as sold. Seeing that image on that wall, because keep in mind, we're now trained, our eyes and our minds are trained to see dimensions on computer screens and artwork that we never saw before. So now you can, where before, when my mentor showed me that floppy disk and I barely knew what a computer was, and I thought, huh? You think you're going to sell artwork from a computer screen off of that thing, or whatever you call it, floppy disk? But not now. Now I buy millions of dollars a year online from auction houses. One of those things is my mind, my brain is taught itself how to view artwork online and understand more than anybody could ever imagine that we would understand. The quality of the camera, you know, we had that moment where we transferred over from film to digital, and it wasn't quite there. It was kind of like that transfer from CD, from analog vinyl records to CD, and we convinced ourselves it sounded good. It never sounded good. It sounded horrible. But now the cameras are shooting with megapixels. And you take that image, and now you take Photoshop, and Photoshop with a laptop, you walk up to that painting, and you see that color of that painting, and you're sitting there, and you're fixing it. And you can even, you know, zoom into that image in areas where you suddenly can take a 2-inch swatch of painting and blow it up to your computer screen and see the nap on the canvas. So, you know, your ability to see things that you never saw before, and your confidence in being able to buy online, that's changed everything. How many of you have purchased something from Amazon in the last month? You know, how many of you are buying your clothes, your toothpaste, everything? And at first, I'm sure you thought, I'm not going to buy a jacket online. And then you buy your first jacket online, and then it doesn't fit. Oh, no, I threw the box away. Where am I going to go now and get a box? Now they send you the jacket. They might send you small, medium, and large. You pick the one, the size that fits you the best. You tuck the other two in there. The label's already printed. There's a tape that you put over the box. And then UPS comes and picks it up. And while they get your signature that they've picked it up, they've actually credited your credit card. So everything is changing. So your ability to market and buy online is no different than what you're dealing with. And you, as a dealer, have to change and say, okay, I'm sending you this painting, but you don't have to buy the painting. If you get the painting and you don't like the painting, send it back to me. As long as you're willing to pay to insure it, package it, and send it out to you, I'm willing to take the chance that you're going to buy the painting. So we send paintings out on spec all the time. And those paintings, most of the time, before someone's willing to accept a $1,000 shipping and insurance fee, they're pretty much set. But there is the occasional time that they'll get a painting and they'll realize, what the hell was I thinking? This painting doesn't work here. It's not scaled properly. Because there are a lot of paintings. We like to think as dealers that everybody that buys from us is building a collection, a historic collection that's going to end up, they're going to end up naming a museum after themselves, and the world is going to come down and ask you, who was that genius that sold you this collection? Oh, that was Peter Blake. No, people still buy because they're on vacation and they want memories. They still buy with that swatch that designer comes in. They still buy from that cocktail waitress with the Louboutins that's walked in that, tells you that this is what you need to buy. They still buy for all the wrong reasons, but we're happy to take their money when they're buying for whatever reason it is.